Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and welcome to another Wake and Bake. Today we'll be making these succulent cake pots. I've been really trying to get a green thumb this year and I bought tons of succulents for my apartment and luckily I've kept them alive. But the cool thing is these guys can't die and they taste awesome too. I've painted them pink, but feel free to leave them natural or paint them your own color if you'd like. The really cool thing is I baked the cake right into these pots. If you like this video, I would love it if you subscribe down below. Okay, without further ado, let's get started.
So I'm going to start with fondant that I dyed purple in a leaf cookie cutter, and I'm going to cut out 4 of these. And I'll be sure to link everything in the description box below. Then I'll use a fondant ball tool on a foam pad, and I'll use this on the bottoms of the leaves. It'll leave a nice little pocket so that I can layer them on top of each other. And then I'll grab my small paintbrush and dip it in a little bit of water. Then I'll add it to the little pocket on my leaf. The awesome thing is the water will act like glue for the fondant. I'll start layering them on top of each other, just where the little pocket is, and it'll start to look like a little 4-pointed star. I'll repeat the process with the second largest leaf cookie cutter. Now I'm going to put the smaller 4-leaf layer on top of the larger one. Place it so that each leaf alternates between the top and bottom layer to make it look full and in bloom. I'm going to repeat the process with 3 more layers, and each time I'll use the smaller leaf cookie cutter in the set. I'll continue to add onto the base of my succulent, and I'll alternate leaves between each layer. After all 5 layers are done, I'll roll a tiny ball of fondant and place that in the middle of my succulent. Then I'll add 3 of the smallest leaves and pinch them around the ball to create the bud. Next, I'll put the succulent to dry in an egg container. The container is perfect for these, and the edges allow the succulents to curl up a bit and look more realistic. I'll set that aside to dry. I decided to make my next succulent green. I'm going to take each of my 5 leaves, and on the round side, I'm going to pinch it at the end. I'm going to use the fondant ball roller on the larger side of the leaf to give it more of a realistic feel. To put the first layer together, I'm going to put some water on the ends of the leaf, and then layer them over each other just slightly, so there isn't any gaps. I'm going to repeat the process with the second largest leaf cookie cutter and also place them on top of the first layer, making sure that I alternate. The third layer is only going to have 4 leaves, since we're getting to the middle part of the succulent, and we need less leaves as we get closer to the bud. Just like the last succulent, now I'll create the little bud by adding a small pea-sized amount of fondant to the middle. I'll brush some water on it and then add each little individual leaf around the ball. add more texture and color, I brushed on red food coloring powder. Fun fact of the day, I have a couple succulents in real life that do have this red tinge. And I looked it up, and you can actually enhance the color depending on how you take care of your succulent and how much light you give it. It's called stressing the plant. This one will also go into the egg container. Lastly is a plant I created that was inspired by the fern leaf cactus, and I made it with a deep green fondant. This one is super easy. I just rolled little logs of fondant from different sizes with a slightly pointed end. Then I grabbed some scissors and cut into the fondant at an angle. And this gives little spikes along the fondant. Don't be afraid if the spikes don't look exactly the same. It'll just look more natural. Once they're ready to go, I'll put them in a container with a bit of water at the bottom to hold it all together. Next are the pots, and you'll see that there are holes in them for drainage, but since we're actually putting batter in them, we don't want them to leak. So I cut a little square of tinfoil, and I place it tightly and securely around the bottom of the pot. I'll do this for all 7 of my pink pots. Time for the chocolate cake. I'll start with 1 1/3 cups of flour. Then I'll add 1 teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I'll mix that together well. I'll set that aside and work on the wet ingredients. Next is the cocoa mixture that'll make it nice and chocolatey. I have 1/2 cup of cocoa here, and I'm adding 1 cup of water that I have just boiled right into the mixture and also giving this a good mix. All I gotta say is, even though it looks like hot chocolate, don't try this at home. It tastes super bitter from the pure cocoa. Lesson learned from when I tried this in the past. Time for my mixer. I'll be adding a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter. I'll mix this until it's creamy and fluffy. Then I'll add in 1 1/4 cups of sugar. I like to add my sugar in 2 parts to give it a little bit of time to mix in. Then I'll add 2 eggs and mix until it's incorporated. When that's done, I'll start adding in my flour mixture. Once that's just mixed in, I'll add my chocolate mixture. I'll alternate between adding the flour and cocoa mixtures until all the ingredients are gone. I'll do this about 3 times each. Then the batter will look like this, a nice milk chocolate. Time to fill up my pots. I'll put the batter in a big Ziploc bag, so it's not as messy as spooning the batter. Then I'm piping to about 2/3 full. I'll put my pots into the oven at 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes. Once they're out of the oven, I'll drizzle simple syrup onto the cakes. This makes them extra moist. I like it for these cakes because they were baked in pots and I'll be adding less frosting, and they have the tendency to dry out a bit easier. Simple syrup is 1 part sugar to 1 part water that you bring to a boil and let cool completely. Here I did 1/2 cup of sugar to 1/2 cup of water. I started to ice my cakes and then I realized it was too difficult with an offset spatula, so I used a piping bag to apply the frosting evenly. Next, I'll crush some graham crackers for my sand. You can also put graham crackers in a Ziploc bag and hammer it like crazy. I actually find it very satisfying that way, but since I have a food processor, and for the sake of time, I decided to use it. Perfect crumbs for sand. I'll transfer to a bowl and dip the top of the pots into the crumbs, and they'll easily stick to the frosting. Finally, I'll add the finishing touches, the succulents. I placed them on top and gave a firm but gentle push so that they stay in place. I made a couple of the same succulents so that I could add them for the other pots. There are my finished desert succulents.
There you have it, my finished succulent cake pots. I love how they turned out, especially with the different color greens and the purple against the pink pots. I almost want to use them as decorations somewhere, but they'll probably get eaten before then. As usual, all my socials will be linked down below. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!